March features a wide variety of Lunar Mansion elections, which can be used to achieve many different outcomes, including victory, favor from authorities, love and friendship, healing and vitality, safe travel, commanding people, destruction, revenge, and attracting good things, among others. In particular, there's a very sweet third Lunar Mansion election blessed by Venus and her domicile in Taurus towards the end of the month, which should not be missed if it's available in your time zone. So stay tuned for the details on that one and all the rest in just a moment. Hello, my name is Nate, aka Postmogulism, and you're watching the March 2023 Lunar Mansion Guide, where I cover all the viable Lunar Mansion magical elections for the month ahead across 4 different time zones: PST, EST, CET, and AET. Plus, I review the lore of all the month's viable mansions and offer my takes on how the astrology of each election will manifest in your magical workings. Before we get on to the elections of the month, I want to take the opportunity to thank you for watching this video and to ask that you subscribe to my channel so that you get notified about all of my content, including these monthly Lunar Mansion guides, my weekly podcast, and regular content about practical magic. Likewise, I'd really appreciate it if you click the like button to let YouTube know that they should show this content to more people like you. Now, usually this is where I would start previewing the list of the mansions for the month ahead, but it occurred to me that I haven't sufficiently explained the process of relocating an electional chart before, which is necessary to make sure that the window of time that I provide here in this guide is equivalent for you based on your exact location on Earth. You see, the moon moves so quickly compared to all the rest of the planets in the sky that the time when the moon reaches a particular degree occurs at very different times around the world. Therefore, you have to adjust the timing that I provide in this guide to whatever the right time is in your location based on the placement of the moon and the other planets that I give. To make this as simple as possible, I'm going to demonstrate this process with an example election from this month before getting into the overview of all the rest of the elections in just a moment. Relocating a Lunar Mansion electional chart is relatively easy, and it all starts with the position of the moon, which makes sense because lunar talismans are all about the moon. Using an astrology tool like astro-seek.com, which is free, or SolarFire or AstroGold, which are paid tools, makes this pretty simple to do. First, you want to create a new event chart, which is just like creating a new birth chart. Then, as you're creating that chart, enter the time of the election that you want to relocate from the guide, using whatever time zone it is that's nearest to your location on Earth. Save that chart and then look at the rendered output and adjust the time backwards or forwards until the moon is at approximately the same degree that I include in the guide. Next, look at the other aspects, the angles between the relevant planets in the chart that I list for the time zone that you're using, and make sure that they're all approaching and within 9 degrees if it's an aspect to the moon, or 5 degrees if it's other planets in aspect to each other. And make sure that the moon is within 5 degrees of either the ascendant or the midheaven, depending on which election you're using. Make sure that no planet is negatively aspected to the moon if the working is benefic, or the reverse if the working is malefic, and ensure that the moon herself is not in a cadence sign, so 3, 6, 9, or 12. And finally, look at the planet which rules the sign that the moon is in. So if the moon is in Leo, it would be the Sun. In Cancer, it's the moon herself. In Aries and Scorpio, it's Mars. In Gemini and Virgo, it's Mercury. In Sagittarius and Pisces, it's Jupiter. Taurus and Libra, it's Venus. And Capricorn and Aquarius, it's Saturn. And then verify that this ruling planet, known as the Lord of the Domicile of the Moon, is not negatively aspected either, unless the working is malefic, and is not located in a cadent house, just like the moon. Once all of that lines up, you've relocated your chart. Congratulations. Now just step forward 1 minute at a time until one of those things changes. Either the moon passes the ascendant or the midheaven, or it moves out of aspect with whatever planet it is that I've listed, or something like that. Note the beginning and ending time, as this is the window for your election, relocated to your specific place on Earth. And all of your work should be done, or at the very least begun, within that window. Now that we've covered that piece of business, let's take a look at all of the elections of the month at a high level before we dive into the details of each mansion in turn. Beginning on the first of the month, the 8th Lunar Mansion, Nathrah, is primed for a victory talisman in CET and AET time zones. A few days later on the 4th, AET time zone has elections in 2 different mansions. The 10th, Jabhah for healing, love, and vitality, and the 11th, Zubrah for glory, favor, and safe travels. Then we skip ahead a few days, and there isn't another Lunar Mansion election until Shaula, the 19th Lunar Mansion, appears in all of its malefic intensity on the 12th and the 13th of the month for destruction and causing blood to flow in PST, EST, and CET time zones. On the 14th, Al-Nam, the 20th Lunar Mansion, provides folks a chance to make a talisman to stir up trouble and cause disobedience. Then the next day on the 15th, Baldah, the 21st Lunar Mansion, brings its sudden and destructive power to bear in PST, EST, and CET time zones. The 18th and 19th of the month provide another malefic election, this time in the 25th Lunar Mansion for destruction and revenge and for separating people in PST and AET time zones. An excellent third Lunar Mansion talisman for attracting good things can be made on the 24th in PST, CET, and AET time zones, making this my favorite election of the month. On the 26th of the month, the moon enters the 5th Lunar Mansion, Hakah, good for favor from authorities, learning skills, and traveling safely, but it's only available in CET time zone. Also on the 26th, or the 27th, depending on your time zone, PST, EST, and CET get a chance for love and friendship in the 6th Lunar Mansion, Hana. And finally on the 27th, AET can make a talisman in Dhira, the 7th Lunar Mansion, where your prayers are answered and all good things are possible. I'll now dive into each of these mansions individually with more detail, covering some of the relevant lore and the configuration in the sky astrologically to provide context about how to work with each election magically. And as always, you can skip ahead to the mansions you're interested in using the links in the description below the video. Let's get started with the first mansion of the month now. Nathrah, the 8th Lunar Mansion, is primarily associated with making its wearer victorious in battle, though this definition can be stretched to include non-combative victories like personal wins, victories in competition, and so on. And you can kind of see this theme in the other magical uses described in Book 1, Chapter 4 of the Picatrix. There it instructs to make images for love and friendship, safe travel, to make incarceration firm, and to expel pests from whatever place you wish. Book 4, Chapter 9 is more specific, saying to create an image with the face of an eagle and the head of a man, a very imperialistic image if we assume that the original meaning was in reference to the eagle crest of the Romans, and to carry that with you into battle. Again, we can substitute battle with any type of competition, so this is designed to be a talisman that's worn during your contest, your competition. Fittingly, the mansion's fixed star is actually the asterism Praesepe, known as the Beehive or the M44 cluster, and is composed of many stars to which Ptolemy attributes the qualities of the moon and Mars, which is to say its nature is essentially moody and violent. The constellation it resides in, Cancer, embodies the mythic battle between Hercules and the giant crab that he was destined to slay as one of his 12 great trials. The mansion spirit is Amnadiel. CET time zone gets one election in Nathrah just before noon on the 1st, when the waxing moon on the ascendant trines the sun and the south node, while also making a sextile to the north node. AET gets the same configuration later on in the day, with the waxing moon on the midheaven, but the rest of the election is the same. The sun is in Pisces, a mutable sign, and the moon in Cancer, which is cardinal, but both are water signs, suggesting an emotionally charged outcome which expresses itself in unpredictable ways. The North Node in Taurus and the South Node in Scorpio carry the same energy as the last couple of eclipses that we've endured, expressing a voracious appetite for physical gain, as well as a willingness to work in the dark to achieve one's ends. This is a powerful, if a little temperamental, configuration for personal gain through conquest, conflict, and aggression, powered by strong emotions. Use this mansion to get worked up enough to win, even against the odds. The 10th Lunar Mansion, Jabhah, is home to the royal fixed star Regulus, well known among stellar astrologers as one of the Watchers, fixed stars of particular power and importance. In the case of Regulus, the star is associated with royal authority and the power to heal, which manifests in its ability to lift up the wearer, increasing health, vitality, and by raising one's spirits. Its positive qualities also include encouraging love between people and allies and strengthening buildings. Book 4, Chapter 9 of the Picatrix instructs casting a talisman during this election and then washing it in water to bestow healing qualities upon the water, which is then given to patients to drink in order to heal more quickly. The image of the mansion is the head of a lion, and its spirit is Ardesiel. AET time zone gets one election on the 4th of the month, with the waxing moon on the ascendant trine Jupiter and Venus. With both benefics configured in a trine and conjunct each other, this is a wonderfully positive election that's perfect for bringing healing joy into your life, or alternatively for strengthening a building which you wish to last a very long time and filling it with good energy. Zubrah, the 11th lunar mansion, brings glory to the wearer of its talismans when made under a waxing moon, as well as aiding with rescuing captives, making profitable trades, safe journeys, strong buildings, and increasing the wealth of allies, according to the Picatrix Book 1, Chapter 4. Book 4, Chapter 9 instructs the mage to petition to be feared by men and kings alike, offering glory and domination over foreign kings. The mansion's image is a man riding a lion, holding a lance, and the ear of the lion, perhaps portraying the image of a conqueror returning victoriously with all of the spoils and benefits of conquest. The mansion's spirit is Nesiel. Late on the 4th of the month, Zubrah offers AET time zone 1 election for making a talisman for these purposes, when the waxing moon on the ascendant trines Jupiter and Venus. The positive alignment with both of the benefics complements talismans made in this mansion beautifully, with expansive Jupiterian energy and the blessings of Venus. Shaula, the 19th lunar mansion, relates to the flow of blood in a variety of intriguing ways. Book 4, Chapter 9 of the Picatrix associates the mansion with hastening menstruation and making childbirth easier. However, this is not a mansion for healing. Its image is a woman holding her hands before her face, as if weeping, and its other uses detailed in Book 1, Chapter 4 of the Picatrix include things like besieging cities, destroying wealth, expelling people from a place, and destroying ships as the other powers it mentions under a waning moon. The spirit of this mansion is a Mutiel. Loss of life force seems to be the common thread between these various uses, the quickness of menstrual shedding and childbirth being a supposedly positive manifestation of this energy under a waxing moon, I suppose, whereas the more violent tendencies express fully under a waning moon. The mansion's fixed star, Shaula, is the stinger in the tail of the constellation Scorpio, which is to say, its weapon. Despite the positive association with aiding in childbirth, my take is that this mansion is essentially malefic, but that even Malefica has the potential to be used for good in the subjective sense. Just not this March. This month, the waning moon in Scorpio sits on the midheaven while squaring Saturn in Pisces, and the moon's ruler is Mars in Gemini, which makes for a pretty nasty and emotionally combustible combination. PST, EST, and CET have 1 election each in this mansion around midnight on the 12th or the 13th of the month, which would be best suited for destruction or expelling people from a place. So if you're fed up with your neighbors and you need them to move, this is the ideal election for that sort of purpose. Al-Nam, the 20th lunar mansion, is an unusual mansion whose qualities seem more pointed at the natural world than the human one, with Book 4, Chapter 9 of the Picatrix stating that its talismans are for hunting on land, and that one should petition it to cause me to take all that I hunt in the world. So obviously a 20th lunar mansion talisman is the ideal accessory for hunting season, but you could reasonably assume that a talisman like this might make it easier to find anything that you're looking for. Yet, Book 1, Chapter 4 also specifically mentions wild animals when it says to make images to tame wild and disobedient beasts. So my take is that it is the domination of otherwise wild nature that's the theme of this mansion. This mansion's image is a centaur with a bow in his hands, a perfect fit for this wild mansion in Sagittarius. Because the Sagittarian archetype is an archer and a hunter, and so this mansion is about these things. He's not a renowned finder of things, but a beastmaster that can control and compel other living beings. In fact, Book 1, Chapter 4 also mentions that one of the talisman's purposes is to cause men to come wherever you wish, so people are included here as well as wild beasts. But what are the mansion's temperament? The Picatrix lists very few negative attributes, but this is clearly a neutral mansion which is either benefic or malefic depending on the condition of the moon. In March the moon is waning in Al-Nam, so this leaves us in something of a quandary. Besides destroying riches, what are the other potential uses of a 20th lunar mansion talisman made under a waning moon? If the positive quality is the taming of wild beasts and compelling men to go where you want, then the negative quality might look like causing disobedience among men and animals. This is just my take and how I would work with this mansion. It seems primed for stirring up problems, agitating, and so on. The spirit of this mansion is Kyriel. This month, EST and CET time zones have an election in Al-Nam close to 1 a.m. on the 14th, while the waning moon is on the ascendant and trine Jupiter in Aries. The fiery composition of Jupiter right now makes this aspect more appealing than it would be otherwise, because Jupiter in Aries has a big get shit done energy that's all hot and bothered, compared to the big Piscean energy that we just had that kind of went nowhere. Jupiter in Aries is knocking down walls to accomplish goals, so that kind of fits here. In fact, now I'm getting all hot and bothered thinking about stirring up dissent with this election, so I'm going to put this one on the calendar, I think. A mansion of sudden endings and beginnings, Baldah, the 21st Lunar Mansion, is another perplexing mess of magical uses, with the Picatrix starkly clear in Book 4, Chapter 9 that it's for destruction and depopulation, but completely unclear in Book 1, Chapter 4, where it says that one can strengthen buildings, increase harvests, make a profit, travel safely, and only suggesting that it can be used to separate wives or their husbands as a negative association. The fixed star Baldah, which resides in this mansion, is the source of the associations described in Book 1, Chapter 4. The mansion's image describes the Roman god Janus, a man having two faces, with one facing forward and the other facing behind. Janus is described as the god of boundaries and beginnings, and this, combined with the attributions of Baldah, the star, and the fact that the mansion's Arabic name, Baldah, translates to the city, referring to the asterism of many faint stars between the eyes and the back of the head of Sagittarius, is all highly suggestive that this mansion is about permanently altering the state of something, for good or ill. Now, let me explain that a little bit. The destruction and depopulation of cities mentioned in Book 4, Chapter 9 is describing an ending, to be sure, but I'm personally inclined to believe that it could as easily be used to found a city, a beginning. There are few other events as starkly permanent in our lived experience as humans as carving out a city out of a wild landscape. One thing definitively ends and a new thing begins. Additionally, it is potentially also compelling circumstantial evidence that there is no other mansion which seems to be dedicated to the ancient and inherently magical tradition of claiming land from the wild and dedicating it to humans. Founding a city would have involved a great deal of ceremony, and the astrological conditions warranted careful consideration for sure, because the fate of the city would depend on that. Clearly, such an event would require auspicious timing and deserves a special place in the lunar calendar. Nevertheless, this moon's waning moon is only suitable for causing endings, though that can ultimately be a positive thing if something in your life needs to come to an end. But the devil is in the details, and it's important to know what you're getting yourself into with this mansion. The spirit of this mansion is Bethnale. Overnight in the early AM hours on the 15th, PST time zone gets one election with the waning moon on the ascendant, trine the North Node, and sextile Saturn. In my experience, the North Node turns up the intensity on any situation that it touches, somewhat uncomfortably, so PST definitely gets the harsher version of this election. EST and CET also get elections in Baldah on the 15th, but the waning moon on the ascendant is trine Venus instead of the North Node and also sextile Saturn. Venus is a little irritable in Aries, but this will probably just work out to the target putting their own comfort ahead of everyone else's, which is more or less okay if the target is you. The 25th Lunar Mansion, Al-Saad al-Akbiyah, seems tied to natural processes and controlling them. The Picatrix, Book 1, Chapter 4, says that it is for making images, to make messengers convey their messages and return swiftly, to separate wives from their husbands, to destroy harvests, to bind a man and wife so that they cannot copulate, to bind a part of the body so that it is not able to function, and so on. It's as if the mansion rules these natural processes and can be used to bind them up. Book 4, Chapter 9 says that this mansion is for protecting crops, taking the opposite perspective. As I frequently say, most mansions are neutral, like this one, and have both positive and negative applications. The Picatrix, however, usually offers a very one-sided perspective in Book 4, Chapter 9, which is sometimes at odds with other mentions elsewhere in its pages. In March, the moon is waning during its time in Al-Saad al-Akbiyah, which aligns it with the protection or destruction of resources, coming between people, and binding of natural functions. In short, talismans made under this mansion in March will be good for revenge, destruction, and separation. PST has an election in this mansion early in the morning on the 18th, with the waning moon on the ascendant sextile Jupiter in Aries. This really isn't strong enough for a talisman, but would be acceptable for a lighter protective spell, in my opinion. AET, however, has the selection around 9 a.m. on the 19th, with the waning moon on the ascendant trine Mars and Gemini, which, while a benefic aspect, still brings the heat of Mars. I think this is ideal for protective talismans where you're not really trying to hurt anyone. Get hype. This month's Thuraya, or Third Lunar Mansion election, is very, very good. This mansion is home to the Pleiades, or the seven daughters of the sea nymph Pleione, whose asterism on the back of the cosmic bull Taurus presages the planting and harvesting seasons, the safe months for sailing, and other avenues of prosperity, and is said by the Picatrix, Book 4, Chapter 9, to be for attracting good things. Book 1, Chapter 4 lists a number of specific uses, such as safety on the sea, alchemical works, hunting in the country, and causing love between two people. But attracting good things just sums it up nicely, don't you think? This month the moon is waxing as she rests in the third lunar mansion, making her very good at these things when she conjoins the midheaven and Venus in Taurus, both in the sign of Venus domicile and the exaltation of the moon. And in PST and AET, the North Node joins the conjunction as well. Whew, that's a powerful election. The image of this mansion is a seated woman with her right hand over her head, and the spirit is Amixiel. PST has this election in the afternoon of the 23rd, while the waxing moon is on the midheaven, along with Venus and the North Node, and the moon is also sextile to Saturn. CET's and AET's elections are on the 24th throughout the day, with the moon on the midheaven and conjunct Venus, but in AET she is also conjunct the North Node in the morning election, making it definitely the better of the two. EST kind of got left out, but it depends on what latitude you are in the EST time zone, because I actually do have access to this election, and I live just south of Cancun, Mexico, but the chart that I pull in NYC doesn't. So if you live in EST time zone, I would definitely check to see if this is available for you after all. Just enter the time that I have here for the PST election and follow the instructions for relocating a chart at the beginning of this video. Hakah, the fifth lunar mansion, is the first of the Gemini mansions and translates to the white spot, referring to the head of the constellation Orion. Orion is the greatest hunter in mythology and renowned for his might. This mansion leverages Orion's mythic stature to gain favor from people in high places and to learn any skill with mastery, as Orion mastered the skills of the hunter. Book 1, Chapter 4 of the Picatrix also mentions safe travels, strengthening buildings, and separating people as potential uses for talismans made under this mansion. The image of this mansion is the head of a man without a body, an obvious reference to the mansion's asterism, which is ironic because these days you can't often make out the head of Orion, just the body itself, but I digress. The mansion spirit is Gabriel. The waxing moon makes this a fairly straightforward election in Hakah for folks in CET time zone, when the moon on the midheaven sextiles the sun in Aries around 9:15 in the morning on the 26th. This configuration should encourage boldness and be perfect for helping you to stand in the light when it comes to getting noticed by and favor from authorities of whatever kind. Hana, the sixth lunar mansion, is a mansion for love and friendships. It is the first of the two mansions which I believe represent the story of the twins of Gemini. While both twin stars, Castor and Pollux, reside within the seventh lunar mansion, Dhira, there is an inescapable bond between these brothers that I believe is the root of Hana's story. You can work the mansion for any kind of love you like, but I think that the love of an unbreakable bond is what it most represents. Because while Book 4, Chapter 9 of the Picatrix paints a lovely picture with its image of two people embracing, wrapped in silk and suffumigated in sweet-smelling herbs and whatnot, Book 1, Chapter 4 goes in an entirely different direction. Here we discover the darker side of Hana, which the Picatrix describes as being for the destruction of cities and villages and besieging them with armies, or for the enemies of kings to extract vengeance and destroy crops and trees, to destroy medicines, and so on. How do we make sense of this? Well, the two brothers, Castor and Pollux, live very active and adventurous lives, including their time with the Argonauts and their later adventures helping to start the Trojan War, and well, on and on. So these destructive qualities were clearly present in these brothers, as well as their conquests with love, and of course the brotherly bond which earned their place in the heavens as the constellation Gemini. The spirit of this mansion is Dhira. In March, Hana has elections in PST on the 26th, and CET and AET on the 27th. PST's election features the waxing moon on the midheaven in the late afternoon sextile both Mercury and Jupiter in Aries. Mercury rules this mansion, so its conjunction to the greater benefic adds a nice extra boost to this election. CET's election takes place mid-morning and features the waxing moon trine Jupiter, and AET's just a little later on with the same sextile with Mercury and Jupiter that gives the boost to PST's election. The last of March's elections falls in the seventh lunar mansion, Dhira, which according to the Picatrix Book 4, Chapter 9, is for all good things, but particularly for those things which are good for more than just you. I like to say that this is the mansion of having your prayers answered, and it's a good idea to only pray for holy things. This is one of the few totally benefic mansions, which is good even under a waning moon. But thankfully, in March we have a waxing moon in this mansion, so its election is definitely talisman worthy. Dhira continues the story of the twins, Castor and Pollux, who, at the end of their illustrious mythological careers, got into a fatal showdown with two other Argonauts over some cattle that they had rustled together. When the conflict spiraled out of control, Castor was struck down and killed, and Pollux, after slaying the other two, grieved so terribly for his brother and prayed so fervently that Zeus took pity on them and interceded with the ruler of Hades. They were allowed to share one mortal life, one day each at a time, while the other lived in Hades for a day, until eventually they were consigned to the sky as the constellation Gemini. The power of prayers being answered is in effect when working in this mansion, which unfortunately only AET time zone gets to do in March, when the waxing moon on the midheaven sextiles both Jupiter and Mercury, which are conjunct each other. Since Mercury rules this mansion, the conjunction with Jupiter boosts the positive effects and makes this a very potent election for a prosperity talisman in particular. That wraps it up for the March 2023 Lunar Mansion Guide. Thanks so much for watching. Since you made it this far, do me another little favor and hit the like button to let YouTube know that you support this channel. And if you haven't done so already, please be sure to subscribe to my channel so that you get notified whenever I post new videos on lunar mansions, my weekly podcast about magic, and other videos that I create about practical magic and related topics. If you're new to Lunar Mansions, check out the resources section in the back of this presentation, which is linked in the description below the video. In it, you'll find links to my detailed guide on the Lunar Mansion system, a video on how to perform Lunar Mansion rituals, and various other resources from around the web. And please, if you have any questions about working the Lunar Mansion system, or astrological magic in general, don't hesitate to reach out. If I know the answer or I can figure it out, I'm always happy to help. You can reach me by email at postmuggleism@gmail.com and on social media where I'm postmuggleism everywhere. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.